Have you ever wanted to capture the entire energy output of the sun? Well, have I got the gadget for you. It's a theoretical megastructure called a Dyson Sphere, and it'll encompass your entire home star. If you've ever heard of the Kardashev Scale, the Dyson Sphere might sound familiar. Type 2 civilizations are defined as those that can harness energy on the scale of that emitted by a star. For example, by using a Dyson Sphere. Although, as you might imagine, building a bubble around the sun is easier said than done. I'm still waiting for them to repair the pothole down the road from my house. To build something on the scale of a Dyson Sphere, we'd need to solve problems like planetary scale mining and complex gravitational dynamics, as well as ultra-efficient energy capture, storage, and transmission. While we definitely can't start building one of these today, we do already have some technology that could someday evolve into Dyson Sphere construction tools. So let's take a journey into the distant future and make a shopping list for our DIY solar system renovation project. The concept of a Dyson Sphere goes way back to a 1937 science fiction novel, but the first non-fiction consideration of energy collecting spheres around stars was a paper from 1960 by a physicist named, you guessed it, Dyson. No, not the vacuum guy. A different Dyson. That paper from 1960 was a thought experiment about the tremendous amount of energy that an extraterrestrial civilization would need to consume in order for us Earthlings to detect it from the outside looking in. Some have interpreted it as a work of satire poking fun at the search for extraterrestrial life, and later in his life, Freeman Dyson himself went back and forth on the concept. Sometimes he referred to it as a joke, and other times stood by his proposal. Nevertheless, there have been multiple searches to see if other civilizations have built a Dyson Sphere anywhere near our galactic neighborhood. So far, the answer is no. But there was a false alarm in 2015 set off by dust around a star commonly known as Tabby's star, located about 1,500 light years away. And while no one on Earth is currently planning to build a Dyson Sphere, we've collectively taken some baby steps in that direction. Like in 2019, China announced plans to build a solar power station orbiting the Earth by 2035. And tech companies have seriously considered building AI servers in space. In orbit, solar panels can access sunlight 24/7, but dissipating heat could be tough and repairs would be costly. Even so, the first small-scale test of a satellite-based AI server launched in November 2025. Now, there are also a whole bunch of ethical questions that come along with a civilization choosing to harness so much energy from their sun. It's not a given that humanity would even want to go down that power-hungry path, but we can learn a lot by thinking about how we might build something so monumental and all the challenges we'd face along the way. So for this video, we're going to set those existential questions aside and figure out what it would take to actually build the dang thing. Let's get one thing out of the way. A solid Dyson Sphere is essentially impossible for quite a few reasons. Even Dyson himself thought so. First of all, there's no way to anchor it so that the sun stays in the center. You can't use gravity because inside an enclosed sphere, the net gravitational force is zero. The pull from one side is canceled out by the other. The sphere exerts no net force on the sun, and the sun exerts no net force on the sphere. So any other forces on the sphere could bump it right into the sun. And there are some unexpected forces out there in space, comets and asteroids and whatnot. It would also need to be perfectly spherical because any imperfection could cause a gravitational imbalance, which could also make it drift into the sun. Plus, you would need a massive amount of incredibly strong material that could withstand the brutal gravitational forces on each panel of the sphere. Yes, I know we said there's no net gravitational force from the sun on a full sphere, but think of the individual panels that make up the sphere. Each panel is pulled inward by gravity, squeezing it against its neighboring panels, which all need to bear this tense load, similar to how every stone in an arch squeezes against its neighbors to stand upright against Earth's gravity. The panels would need to be made of material that are far stronger than anything we know of today, and it's not even clear we would have enough stuff in our solar system to construct a continuous sphere that big. But there is a slightly more practical version, a Dyson swarm. Instead of a solid structure, think of a collection of satellites all orbiting independently. The big advantage here is you could build it incrementally and start generating power right away. There's nothing stopping us from building just a few swarm satellites to test how they work before we commit to a solar system scale project. Of course, that doesn't mean it would be Easy. The worst case scenario is a collision between satellites that sets off a chain reaction and brings the whole chain down. We could try to carefully choreograph an orbit pattern to avoid collisions, but long term, a swarm will require active upkeep and maintenance. Luckily, we already know how to do this. Carefully choreographing and repositioning satellites is something we do today for the 17,000 satellites we have in orbit as of early 2026. Although we might not need to worry about that if we build a Dyson bubble instead. This is a similar idea to a swarm with many independent structures, but each of the structures would be tethered in a relatively stationary position rather than circulating in a traditional orbit. Since orbits rely on angular momentum to balance the inward force of gravity, the physics of a Dyson bubble needs to work a little differently. Photons of light exert a very small amount of force when they strike a surface, so the components of a Dyson bubble could use solar sails to balance photon pressure with the gravitational pull from the sun. The photons pinging on the inside of the sail could push it outward enough to counteract the inward pull of gravity. But the catch is, these Dyson bubble components would need to be ultra light. But we have already built solar sails, like Light Sail 2, which flew for over 3 years. So a Dyson bubble isn't out of the question. Where we put our Dyson swarm is the next crucial question. And we'll answer that question about our power-producing megastructure right after we power our production with this quick ad. Since you watch SciShow, I know you're the kind of person who loves learning outside of the classroom, and that's what makes this video's sponsor, Brilliant, so great too. Brilliant is an online learning platform made for everyone from age 10 to 110. Those courses are crafted by world-class teachers from MIT, Harvard, and Stanford, and they're designed to build your confidence in coding. Take their course on algorithmic thinking, for example. In that course, you get to solve over 200 problems. It's far from falling asleep in a lecture hall. To learn for free on Brilliant for a full 30 days, go to brilliant.org/scishow, scan the QR code on screen, or click on the link in the description. Brilliant's also given our viewers 20% off an annual premium subscription, which gives you unlimited daily access to everything on Brilliant. The closer a satellite is to the sun, the more power it can capture, requiring fewer satellites overall. On the other hand, the most efficient plan would be to mine the materials, construct the components, and launch the swarm satellites all from the same place. So to strike that perfect balance, we need a planet with the perfect resume. It needs to be made of the right stuff to mine, have an environment we could build things in, and have low gravity for low effort satellite launches. Dyson had his eye on Jupiter for this role, but the gas giants don't have the right elements or a solid surface to build things on. Plus, they're far away from the sun, and we would need to overcome their high gravitational pull. So in 2022, a paper instead ran the numbers for the rocky terrestrial planets of the solar system. It's likely Earth would be out of the running for sentimental reasons. It's the only place we know we can survive without life support. Kind of important. But let's say for a moment that we did want to build a swarm at Earth's orbit. If we want our swarm to produce power at the same rate we've been consuming it, then to make all those satellites, we would need to scrape 2.9 meters of material off of all of the land on Earth. Ouch. On top of that, Earth has the highest gravity of the terrestrial planets. It would require some heavy lifting to get each and every satellite off the ground. Looking at our neighbors, Venus's gravity is close to Earth's, but with surface temperatures of 465 degrees Celsius, it'd be a tough spot to put a manufacturing plant. Plus, the probes we send to Venus have a tendency of getting crushed by the enormous atmospheric pressure. Mercury looks kind of promising. It's probably the most discussed source of materials for a Dyson swarm. It's close to the sun and small, so it would be easy to launch things. It's also made of the right stuff, being 70% iron. A lot of it is in the planet's core though, so it would take some digging to get to. Okay, by some digging, I do mean we would have to essentially dismantle the entire planet. And I guess one side of Mercury is 449 degrees Celsius, while the other is negative 170. So you can't have humans doing the work, and none of our current robotic technology could survive such extremes either. Maybe not so promising after all. That leaves Mars. Its surface temperatures range from 20 degrees Celsius down to negative 150. Chilly but feasible. And over there, we kept the Mars rover Opportunity running for nearly 15 years. Mars's crust is 14% iron, so it's realistic to mine, and its gravitational strength is just under 40% of Earth's. So it makes sense that that particular study picked Mars as the winning candidate for Dyson swarm production. Oh, and we can't forget, those satellites need to capture some power. One obvious way to do this is with photovoltaic solar panels. They're what we currently use to power most of our satellites. Our current versions are unfortunately expensive and break easily. The tech is improving fast, but we have a long way to go until photovoltaic solar panels are durable enough to last for generations. It would be a hassle to repair panels on swarm satellites millions of kilometers from Earth. Another possibility is concentrated solar power. This would just mean putting a bunch of big mirrors on the satellites and bouncing sunlight toward collection stations. These could either be in space or on a planet like Mars. When light hits a collection station, it would either hit a highly efficient solar panel or be absorbed as heat before being converted to electricity. We already do something like this on Earth at thermal solar plants. Massive arrays of mirrors focus the sun's rays on salts that melt at high temperatures. The energy is then stored as thermal heat in the melted salt. But for any of these options, you'd additionally need to get the energy from the production point out to where people need it. You think untangling Christmas lights is bad? Try running power cords to satellites. Wireless transmission through microwaves is one way to do this, and we've even already demonstrated it's possible. In 2023, for the first time, researchers beamed a small amount of power from a satellite to the surface of the Earth through microwaves. Rome wasn't built in a day, and a Dyson Sphere wouldn't be either. We would need to build gradually, iterating along the way. Construct and launch a couple sections, learn some valuable tech lessons from it, and use the energy that those sections collect to build the next batch. Unfortunately, it would take a lot of rocket fuel to launch all those components into space. So an electromagnetic launch system, essentially a giant railgun, would likely be more practical. While we haven't yet launched any satellites from Earth using one of these, there are groups already working on similar ideas. In 2021, a company completed their first suborbital test flight launched from a centrifuge. This works by spinning a spacecraft very fast before launching it vertically. The mechanism is a little different from a railgun, but it's the same basic idea of using something besides rocket fuel to give the craft enough kinetic energy to reach orbit. Or that same 2022 study about the terrestrial planets proposed an alternative plan for building a swarm with a more easily achievable goal. While satellites orbiting the sun are certainly possible, their plan suggests they should orbit Mars instead. It wouldn't look like a traditional Dyson swarm, but it would be able to more easily reflect light to planetary base stations by keeping the satellites close by. They estimate it would take about 50 years of building to make a swarm that could generate power at the same rate as the Earth consumed in 2019. So it would be a slow start, and that plan would require 5.5 billion satellites in orbit around Mars, but it's not the upper limit. If you saturated the space around Mars, you could capture more than 8 times as much power as the Earth used in 2019. You could charge so many Nintendo 3DSs with all of that power, or I guess, like build some massive particle colliders or improve interplanetary travel. There are options. There's no doubt we have a long way to go before any of this becomes reality, if it ever does. But even within our current understanding of physics and engineering, we already have some tools that could evolve to Dyson swarm level tech. Of course, the ethics and economics of building one to consume that much energy are a whole other complicated conversation, but hey, all we promised here was a project plan. Now, does anyone know a project manager with experience building multi-generational theoretical megastructures? Yeah, anyone?